Hello guys, I'm back.
Welcome back, my friends.
Happy New Year, comrades. I know it's a bit late, but I was very busy studying, training and working. Anyway, my community guidelines warning, aka shadow ban, is finally over, so...
Bruh.
Just kidding, Uncle YouTube, just kidding. So last week I was sobering up on a rusty bench covered in the contents of my stomach, and the only warmth I could feel was from my last cigarette, which was also nearing its end. Winter. And so I opened YouTube to catch up on what's been happening in the past few weeks of my absence. Wes Watson is probably going back to picking up the soap for his bald, tattooed alpha male brothers. Looks like Lily Phillips will be ready to settle down in a few weeks. And last but not least, the beef between Mike Israetel and Dr. Greg keeps getting better and better. And that, my dear viewers, will be today's topic. If you're even slightly involved in the fitness industry, you know that the beef between Greg and Mike has been brewing for over 5 years now. At one point it even seemed like they had somewhat buried the hatchet, but then Dr. Mike pulled a good old Italian special and switched sides. Pretty bad move, because in short, Greg responded by hiring a new editor, which was the equivalent of buying an entire atomic arsenal. If you want to know why, see for yourself. The reason I'm making this video is to give my opinion on the origin of this war between our favorite doctors. You see, years ago there was a big debate about volume and intensity between Greg and Mike, where Greg advocated for an approach that could be summed up in one sentence:
train harder than last time!
You really get the meaning of these words when you hear them for the third fucking time.
So we don't have the capacity.
And that's basically it, while Mike preached a more science-based approach like usual, with mesocycles, deloads, minimum effective volumes, leaving reps in reserve most of the time, etc. Pretty complicated for the average gym goer, I must admit. And so the conflict started, and today Matos is here to decide who is right and share some of my wisdom with the internet, because it needs it. Now, before we start, keep in mind that this is not me calling out Greg or Mike or anything. I know I made a few jokes about them in my previous videos, and I will continue to do so, but I really don't hate either of them. For introduction and better understanding, let me tell you a short story from my early years of lifting. A few years ago I was a hot-blooded teenager craving girls, alcohol and of course having big muscles. And I succeeded in only one of the three. Can you guess which one? But as it always has been and always will be, social media is a huge garbage dump of useless junk and attention-seeking insects that we have to dig through like vultures to occasionally find a diamond. Or in other words, a channel worth watching. And for me that was old school, and I repeat, old school Greg Doucette. After weeks of watching his videos and listening to his advice, I was an educated doctor of fitness and health, embarking on the thorny path of gaining muscle mass. And always before I entered the gym, I recited a little prayer: just train harder than last time. And frankly, it all worked perfectly for me. For about 6 months, until everything came to a halt. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
Now, what does training harder than last time actually mean? Well, if you really want to train harder than last time, you have to do something more than last time. Or in other words, you have to make at least some kind of progress, unlike feminists at their rallies. I'm just kidding, guys. If you didn't know, my house was once robbed in the middle of the night, and when the masked guy pressed a gun to my head and told me to bring him the most valuable things from my house, I handed him, with tears in my eyes and trembling hands, my collection of books on gender equality and a Taylor Swift record. It was one of the most painful moments of my life. And by the way, I'm 6 feet too. And when it comes to getting jacked, progress means either doing more reps or lifting more weight than last time. You know, basic progressive overload. And like I said before, that worked for me for about 6 months. And after that, no matter what I did, it, I couldn't squeeze out one more rep on my exercises. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't training every day for 3 hours, 5 sets per exercise and all that hardcore gym bro bullshit. Even then I was smarter than that. So what did I do to solve that problem? Yeah, that too, but more importantly, I decided to push even harder than last time.
Bravo! Bravo!
Since I couldn't do more reps or add more weight, I started adding more sets, because harder than last time.
I would shit my fucking pants.
Fast forward another few months and my sets turned into rest pause drop sets. My strength and size were in exactly the same place as before, and even worse, I felt like shit most of the time.
It makes me shit my pants?
And yes, that robbery I mentioned earlier didn't help either. And then one day, just out of the blue, a thought struck me like lightning. What if this harder than last time approach isn't the most optimal one? What if I've misunderstood Coach Greg? Or what if Mike Israetel with his reps in reserve scale and mesocycles was actually right all along? And now we come to the meat of this video.
I have a 10-inch dick.
First of all, please understand that if you're not a complete beginner and a teenager, there is no fucking way that you will make progress every single week. Seriously, get this out of your head. Even with steroids, this will not always be the case. This is something that those old school HIT guys used to believe, and I already did a whole video about that. And yes, Manser fanboys really are a special breed, I tell you that. If you are progressing every single week, well, I'm sorry, but you're not actually training hard. Either that, or you're just on diabolical amounts of steroids. It's also true that each individual has a different recovery capacity. Some rare individuals can train like horses and keep growing. Just look at Joffrey Verity Schofield. The guy is natural, 34, trains like an animal all the time and keeps getting bigger. I couldn't even dream of recovering, let alone progressing, if I trained with his volume and intensity. Again, these are exceptions more than anything, but worth mentioning nonetheless. Back to the topic. If you watch Greg's videos, you will see that his answer to questions about how hard should you train is always
Harder than last time!
In my opinion, this is kinda true, but it needs some further explanation, and that's why this advice was criticized by certain individuals with a certain level of education.
Fucking sociopath like, Greg Doucette or whatever.
Like I said, you won't be able to train harder than the last time every single workout, period. No matter if you're natural or enhanced, you're still human, and from time to time you'll have to pull back on your workouts and intensity in order to grow and get stronger. This just train harder than last time mentality will only get you so far before you hit a plateau and start beating your wife and kids to let the frustrations out.
Thank you, Greg.
So, how hard should you train? Well, this is like asking how much can I drink before I pass out and spend the next 3 days in the hospital due to alcohol poisoning. You will have to try it a few times before you learn it. I definitely agree with Dr. Mike that RPE or RIR scale is a very useful tool, even necessary when you become more advanced, if you know how to use it. And with that I mean that you actually know what 2 reps in reserve is, what failure is, etc. And from my experience, 90% of lifters, even those who consider themselves advanced, fail to estimate reps in reserve correctly. So yes, you will have to train to absolute failure many times before you truly learn to approximately estimate your reps in reserve. Then you can start using your reps in reserve scale to your advantage. Just forcing yourself to train harder and do more and more every single workout won't work for you for a very long time, trust me. Especially not for heavy compound lifts where leaving a rep in the tank is almost necessary. Now let's put all this into a real life situation. Let's say you're an intermediate lifter, because I suppose most of you watching this are. You probably warm up well and then slowly build towards that 1 or 2 hard sets per exercise where you go to failure and track progress. Now let's say for example it was a shoulder press and you managed to do 8 full reps with certain weight before you failed. When you do this very same exercise next week or in 5 days depending on your frequency and you push as hard as you can like you should, you will most likely get 8 reps again. Now does that mean that you are a wanker and that you didn't train harder the last time?
No.
Does that mean that you should should force 3 more reps after a few seconds or do 1 more set just for the sake of training harder than last time?
No.
Does that mean that you wasted your workout and didn't stimulate your muscle to grow?
No.
All that means is that you are not a complete newbie anymore, and that even if you give your best, you won't get stronger every single session. You will get to 9 reps eventually, just not as fast as you did 2 years ago. On the other side, if you're still struggling with that 8 reps after 3 weeks or so, and in the 3rd week these 8 reps become 7 reps, that means that you overtrained, and it's definitely time for a long deload because you're dumb and don't know your own body like Mike Israetel does. However, this is a scenario you definitely don't want to see very often. So how should we fix this pickle we found ourselves in, where we have just trained harder than last time on one side and a scientific clusterfuck on the other? Find your G-spot between volume and frequency that will allow you to push as hard as you can on your working sets and still recover and make progress over time. In my case, that's 2 sets per exercise while training each muscle group every 4 to 5 days. When we look from a pure hypertrophy training point of view, you definitely should strive towards making progress and doing something more over time. Not every week, people. That set of 8 reps done to failure will still be stimulating next week or even 2 weeks after that, and you add your rep, aka progress, when you can. Training harder than last time just for the sake of training harder without having a well-structured plan and tracking your performance is far from optimal for gaining size, to say the least. If you really gave your best and still didn't smash a PR, that doesn't mean that you didn't train hard. This is how normal, natural progression looks like. So from this point of view, I prefer Dr. Mike's method with using the RPE scale, planned deloads, etc. That is, if you are very serious about your physique goals and you have enough knowledge or money to pay some experienced coach to do that for you. Because let's be honest, most people are busy and don't have enough time, let alone knowledge, to do this on their own. I mean, I can. However, if you are an average gym goer who just wants to get jacked and has other more important things in life, just listen to Greg and train harder than last time, because there is a 90% chance that you are not pushing yourself hard enough, and that's most likely the reason why you are not growing. And yes, I know that Greg knows that, and Mike obviously knows that, or does he? I just happened to fall into the 10% category and was already training hard enough, so this advice did me more harm than good. Anyway, one thing is for sure, this video will not save their marriage by any means. See you next time.